Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today we have Matt Astifan with us. Matt is a digital marketer based in Vancouver, Canada. His agency, Matt Astifan Digital, specializes in creating marketing automations. Back in 2009, he started a local meetup, Internet Masterminds, which bloomed into a global community with over 14,000 members, producing live events in cities around the world with a BHAG, stands for Big Hairy Audacious Goal, if you're not familiar with that term, to expand into every country in Africa. Today, he's focused on growing his media company, webfriendly.com, which documents resources, tips, and strategies for starting and growing your business online. Matt, it's so great to have you on the show.
Excited to be here. I think it's cool.
Yeah, so I'm curious, what's with the name Web Friendly?
Well, I don't know. I think when I first started my business, trying to come up with a business name, I thought, mobile friendly, web friendly, I don't know. And then originally I had the .ca in Canada. And then after, I don't know, like 10 years of negotiation, I finally bought webfriendly.com. Originally, they wanted like $25,000 for it, and I ended up getting it for $2,500. And then I got the trademark, so I even own the trademark for it too. So that's, I don't know.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
No, I get it. So let's talk about how you've had to pivot, because you were in the meetup space, essentially, or mastermind space. You had a very successful meetup in Vancouver. How many folks would show up at a meeting typically?
Well, it was interesting with the Internet Masterminds Meetup. It started off as just a group of friends that met at a conference it was like a marketing conference, and they said, "Hey, we should keep on meeting and keep on talking about marketing." This is like 2008, 2009. I joined that group later on, and then the original guys who had started it kind of like left, and then I was just like me left there, and then I was like, I guess now I'll organize. And we used to meet every Monday night at 7 o'clock. And if you lived in Vancouver and you were in digital marketing, you knew about this thing. And we did this for like many years, I think 5 or 6 years. It was literally every Monday night. When we first started, even if it was a holiday, we would be there on a Monday night. Even if it was like Monday before Christmas, we were there, But then we started taking holidays off. And there's a lot of holidays in Canada that fall on a Monday. At one point, we were getting over 100 people coming out every Monday night. And we ended up going to a bigger venue. I sold out events. Like in like a couple of weeks, we would sell like a 300-person event. So it became pretty big and popular in Vancouver. And then we started filming the presentations. And those are now they became clips that are now on YouTube. We now have a YouTube channel. And I just it's so fascinating kind of learning the whole thing. Whenever we have a speaker come out and the people hear that speaker, right? We do about an hour of a speed mastermind at the beginning, and then a speaker shares. So the speakers are always sharing case studies or like things that worked for them in their business in terms of digital marketing strategies. And it was just great kind of like learning from the community, right? And it really built a community inside Vancouver of this, like all these digital marketers who just shared ideas and, business connections and so on. And then eventually we started branching out and creating chapters in other places in the world.
Great. And so you had how many different chapters going before COVID really hit?
So what happened was I spent a long time, I would say, almost procrastinating about it, or like not procrastinating. I was a little bit scared to like dive in and build the chapters because I knew that once I did it, I would have to be there for all the chapter leaders. And my goal was to get to 100 chapters in a year. So I finally, I talked with a lot of people. I'm like, is this really my next thing I want to do? And when I look back at where I made the most impact for the people I worked with, it was bringing people together in these events. And a lot of people would come to me and say, because of this event, I met this person. There's people who met and got married. They met at the event and then they fell in love and got married. There's people who became business partners and built multi-million-dollar businesses. There's a guy, he's just an entrepreneur. He came there and he met somebody who he then hired to be his digital marketer and then grew a multi-million-dollar business, right? So there was a lot of those stories. People would I would just see people out in public and they would be like, oh, because of your event, this happened. And I was like, wow. So I want to replicate that in other cities. So I'm really big on creating systems and workflows, that sort of thing. And so I created all these systems. I had everything documented. Here's how an event works. Here's how it gets promoted, like everything about how to run the event. And then I worked with lawyers to create a licensing agreement, so we can then, it's kind of like we're in a way selling franchises or like licenses to use the brand. It's kind of like how TED does TEDx, it was kind of that sort of an idea. And so the thought was to build these chapters in other cities so we can then attract those entrepreneurs, those marketers, and so on to come into those cities and then share their advice with the community and build communities there. And then we would film all that, and then all that video content would then become our media for YouTube. Maybe we want to start a podcast or whatever. And so it was just kind of like documenting the knowledge of people like in communities all over. So when we first started, our goal was to hit the top 30 metropolitan cities in North America. And I went to Africa in 2019. I was in Rwanda, and when I was there, I don't know, I was at a conference, and then I thought, hey, it would be cool to do a talk when I was in Africa. And so I went on Meetup, and I found like the biggest meetup there. It was a Google developers meetup. And I messaged the organizer. I said, hey, I'm in Africa. Can I come and do a talk? And so they organized something. We had over 100 people show up, and I told them all about how they could work online and make money online. And they were like blown away. Like they all had this concept there that in order to grow the economy there, that they had to make money in Rwanda. And I'm like, no, you need to make money outside Rwanda, bring money into Rwanda, and that's how you grow the economy, right? And they were all just like baffled. And I usually charge $2,500 for this course, and I gave everyone there free access if they wanted it. And I helped a lot of people. And from that, a few people actually ended up doing social media as a service. One guy, he started a tourism company. He used some of the strategies there. So it was just amazing to me just being able to help people. Like there's so many talented people in Africa. They just don't have the same resources to knowledge and to people and connections and relationships. They were unaware, right? But as soon as I opened their eyes, they were like taking action, right? So I was really like driven to want to kind of work with that sort of a community. And while I was there too, I don't know if this is going to sound wrong or whatever, but I guess because I'm white, I would stand out or whatever. But I was at a conference, and I was meeting with parliament members of Nigeria and so on. And I had a tour guide ask me if I want to go to the president's house of Rwanda and stuff, So it was just interesting how connections could open up so quickly in Africa. And then I started hearing stories about Jack Dorsey spending time in Africa to figure out how to get Square in Africa. And Google is really big. Their Google developers meet up. They spend a lot of money to do that. There was a lot of really big companies trying to get into Africa and building communities there. And so that was like my big thing. But I was like, if we're in Africa, it's not the same model. We're not going to charge for events. There's not going to be many experts to share advice. It's like, what do we do in Africa? So there was a little bit different. So we started our chapter in Rwanda. And they would just meet up and just kind of talk marketing, watch videos. And our idea was to start broadcasting people in to then share and be able to answer questions with them and that sort of thing. But that was my big goal, was like, let's make money from these North American chapters, and then let's take that and then let's see how we could impact the communities in different countries in Africa. And that was my big goal with this. And then, of course, we also want to get into South America. We already had a chapter in Mexico and so on. So that was kind of my vision. But of course, it was all about live events. It was all about community. And then when COVID hit, I was a little bit stuck. I said, well, I spent so much time, money, energy. Like I put a lot into kind of getting it going, creating the systems, the processes, building a sales team. And then I was like, well, maybe COVID will just blow over in a couple months, And then a couple months went by, and I realized it wasn't going to blow over. So I basically put it on hold right now. My thought was to kind of start it back up when I think COVID will soon end, which I think that time is coming soon. And that's my prediction. But yeah, that's kind of where it's at right now.
Wow. That's quite a journey. That's a bit of a roller coaster ride there. And wow, I'm really impressed with your drive and vision and passion to bring people together, especially with your experience in Rwanda and wanting to be of service to that community there and help them to see a bright, compelling future. That was awesome. Was there somebody that you were inspired by, that you kind of modeled, somebody who, I don't know, like a Jack Dorsey or whatever, that was doing amazing stuff with third world countries, and you just thought, wow, I'd want to do something like that someday?
Not so much. I think when I first kind of got this idea of how do you build a global community like this, I started looking for other people who have done it and so on. I came across what's it called? I think it's called CMX. It's a conference for community leaders, and that opened a whole other world. I was able to reach out to other people who are building global communities. There's one called Fuck Up Nights. They started in Mexico, and they have entrepreneur startups come in and talk about how they messed up their failures. And it's like a funny thing, and I thought that very interesting. I talked with Startup Grind, the founders there. They're really big on this right now. They grew organically starting around 2014, and now they have like, I think last I checked, like 2.5 million members worldwide. I don't think that they're really big on the third world country thing, but it was just seeing their model. And it was just interesting. Like, everyone was so open to talking to me about it. Like when I was first kind of getting into it, I just contacted everybody who had done it, who had created a multi-chapter organization and built communities, and we just got on the phone and just talked about kind of what it was like and the mistakes, and and yes, maybe had 2 dozen calls with different leaders like that, and we talked about third world countries and that sort of thing. But the challenge is it's a long-term play, right? Like you get 100,000 members in Africa, and then maybe you get Jack Dorsey to come and sponsor your group or what, that sort of thing. But because it's such an untapped market, such a high population, I just think that there's so much that people can do. And I think people don't realize how much you could do in Africa, and that there's like a big income potential for like actually creating an impact there. And not about going to build schools or like doing stuff like that, but it's like, how do you get people to learn how to work online? It happened, in many places in the world, right? India and the Philippines, like those are like very popular for outsourcing. But how many people know, hey, let's outsource to Rwanda, right? Or whatever. Or let's outsource to Nigeria, right? But there's actually a lot of schools and education. There's a lot of educated people over there. But yeah, they're not as much in the entrepreneur space, but they're learning, developing, designing, marketing, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned schools in Africa, because I'm on the board of a nonprofit that builds and operates schools in Zambia, in rural Zambia. It's called Impact Network, and yeah, I care very much about their mission and helping these kids wouldn't be able to go to school. They just live too far out from a nearby school, and to have a school in their local tiny village where there's a proper curriculum and there are tablets that they can use, and there's power for them to charge the tablets, like from the solar unit and so forth. That's game-changing, life-changing for a kid in a rural village. So my hat's off to you for seeing the opportunity and working to try and make their lives better. And yes, it's quite a difficult, challenging time with COVID for many people. So yeah, you had to pivot. You had to, as you said, put that on the side, put it on pause for a while. So what are you up to now? Like, what's the interim plan until things open back up and your vision for global domination with Internet Masterminds can finally take place again?
So the big vision with Internet Masterminds was we are creating a media company, right? A media company that has a community built in, right? And so with doing all these events, our goal was to get all this content of people in these various cities giving these presentations, right? And so that has always been kind of like, I want to build a media company, right? And in a way, do it in a way that we can make an impact. Like I see Internet Masterminds as like a social enterprise, right? And so right after when COVID hit, I had a lot of people I've worked with in the past just message me and say, hey, can you help me with this project? Can you help me with that project? So I just was kind of like coasting at the time. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And then I just started taking one project after another. And then all of a sudden I was back into having an agency again. And a lot of the projects I was doing was around creating systems and workflows. And now I would say it's marketing automation, right? I do a lot of stuff with like active campaign, email marketing. I do lots of retargeting, advertising. and just creating these systems of like how do you create content, or like we were working with like a Shopify store and it was kind of he had no images and it's like how do we find all the images, how do we get all the descriptions done, how do we run all the ads, all that stuff, right? And so started doing that. And with that, if you have an agency, for me, the reason why I was so into marketing automation is because I didn't want to have so many employees. I never wanted an office. I didn't want to have a bunch of employees. I work with contractors, freelancers, that sort of thing. But I didn't want to have a big team. I like to build a business that's more of like a system, very lean, right? And so I kind of look at doing that work as I'm now self-employed. I'm not like building a business, right? I'm not building something I could sell. Even if I don't want to sell it, it's like it's not that sort of a thing. But it was paying the bills, and honestly, like I really enjoy it. Like I love doing this stuff. I love figuring things out, that sort of thing. So I'm happy. But I know I need a real business. And so I look back at that domain I had, webfriendly.com. It had a pretty good domain authority, and it's sort of ranking on a lot of different sites, a lot of different keywords for a few of the articles that were there. And I discovered that we had affiliate links inside some of these articles and that they were starting to make some money with it. So I started looking at that. I like the name Web Friendly. I own the trademark. I own the username on every single social network. I even own like webfriend.ly that we use as like a short URL. It's a good brand. It's a good brand name. I actually invested like thousands of dollars with like a design company that like made the logo and stuff like that. So I'm pretty happy with the whole brand and everything. And I think it's a great asset that I have. For a while, I was actually trying to sell it just as like a name because I was like, I don't know what to do with it anymore. It used to be my company was Web Friendly and everything I did was a product of Web Friendly. Like Internet Masterminds was a product of Web Friendly at one point, or my services were a product of. So I started looking at that and thinking, how do I build webfriendly.com into a media company? And so right now, what I'm working on is creating content, written content for webfriendly.com. My idea there is that I want to create resources to help people navigate either building or growing a business online. And I'm taking my own knowledge. What is some unique knowledge that I have? And that's not on the web, like that's not explained already, and like where does that fit in? And so I'm creating those articles that is in a way documenting my knowledge that I have of like different ways to grow and or start an online business. So my vision right now is to create that. We have about 45 articles, maybe 10 are like really good in ranking. The other ones are okay. And we're updating all the past articles and then building more content. So I hired a writing team, research. I'm just hiring people, contractors, to do these different tasks. I take everything that needs to get done and I task it out into like a workflow, and I give it to somebody, and I'm like, this is your job. They're like, you're doing the keyword research, you're doing the content outlines, right? You're doing the actual writing, you're doing all the graphic work, and so on. So I just have everybody for different tasks, and the goal right now is webfriendly.com is going to have resources to help people to start and grow and build a business. And our YouTube channel, eventually, when we start that, will be reviews of softwares and reviews of products. So it's going to be more about reviews. And then eventually I want to start a web-friendly podcast that covers news that's happening that would affect people who want to start or grow an online business. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Eventually, I want to get into the news of online business, and that's kind of like my long-term goal with it. But right now, my challenge that I've been kind of working on for the last few months is how do you create content at scale? How do you create 100 articles, or even get to let's say 100 articles in a year, or get to 300 articles in 2 years? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is trying to like figure that out, doing the articles as well as like getting those articles ranking and stuff, and thinking about the future of SEO. Because I'm thinking about what happens in 3 years or 5 years when those, Google snippets become more prominent, or when voice becomes more prominent, and these new search engines that are coming out, and so I'm really building everything to, what's it going to be like in 3 to 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Right. And are you planning to go back to doing the Internet Masterminds thing after things open up, and do both things simultaneously in equal amounts of focus?
Yeah. So what's interesting with Web Friendly is that I've been doing it in a way that, my attempt has been that I do nothing but give direction. So I create a workflow and then I just hire people out. So I'm just getting people who do these tasks. The challenge has been the getting unique, valuable content. So now it's got to the stage where I'm creating these outlines. Like I get someone doing the research, the keywords, all that. And then I just create like an outline of like, here's what it would be about. I record a quick Loom video, like a quick screen recording, and just talk and just explain, okay, this is what this article will be. There'll be this section, will be about this, right? And then that's it. And then they'll write everything. And so right now, that's what's happening. They're writing, but then I'm ending up being the editor. So now I'm trying to find an editor. But yeah, I'm trying to build web friendly in a way that doesn't require me. It just creating the task. Like I can create a system and then give it to somebody. Whereas Internet Masterminds is where, yeah, what I would like to be able to run that. I would like to be the CEO of Internet Masterminds. But with web friendly, I'm building it in a way that it can work without me. So I believe that it can be achieved. I think that I've been very good at. It's just finding the people to put the systems in play, right?
Yeah. This aspect of building a business is probably the most challenging and the most important, of finding the right who or who's to fill the most important roles. Because if you try to focus on getting the how, then you end up being the bottleneck and wearing all sorts of hats, juggling all sorts of plates, and instead, or spinning plates, I guess. And then, you can never extricate yourself out of the business. So you find the right who's. You're right now focused on finding contractors, people to do the writing, people to do the keyword research, and now, as you say, to do the editing of the articles. Eventually, you'll be able to who yourself out of the entire organization, and it'll just be a business that runs on its own, self-managing organization.
Mm-hmm. I do find whenever doing that, like setting up that system, it is always best to do some of those tasks yourself first to really kind of work out the kinks. So I don't feel too guilty about kind of doing it. Like when I first started doing the content outlines, like I was researching all these tools. How do you create a great content outline, And then like there's so many tools have so many features. And then eventually I just kind of like figured it out. It was like, wait, you don't even need a tool. It's like it became way simpler, right? But it's because I kind of got into it, figuring it out. And then now it's so easy to hand off, right? The keyword research too, right? It's like telling someone do keyword research around this thing. They're not so creative with keyword research, but once I started just kind of like, okay, I'll just do it myself. Then I was like figuring out kind of how I was doing the research and then putting that into the documentation. So that's why it's kind of like I'm okay kind of doing everything at first. I do it myself until I really got it. And then I could really explain to somebody else, here's how you really do this well, right?
Yeah, makes total sense. Yeah, and if we could kind of break apart each of these components and see what the learnings were that you got from trying these different tools and approaches and what ended up working the best, I think that would be really instructive for our listener. Because everybody needs content. Everybody needs more content. And I think pretty much everybody would want to do less of the heavy lifting themselves. So if they can learn from your lessons and your experience, I think that would be quite helpful to them.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I have figured out a few things that would save a lot of people time if they wanted to do some content marketing. I guess the first thing is these content outlines. Well, actually, I should back up. I think for most businesses, unless you're building a media company and your goal is 100 blogs or whatever. For me, what I'm doing with all these blog posts is I have affiliate links inside of them, and I'm also planning to put something in there where someone could read an article about a certain strategy, resource, whatever, and then I'm actually working with partners. So at the bottom, it'll say, hey, would you like to get a free consultation with someone who could actually help you do this? And I'm working with partners who are service-based partners who will then take the call and then possibly work with that client, and then I would get a commission from that transaction. So a few ideas of kind of like how it's going to make money just by creating content, right? But if you have another business that is not based on making money directly off the content, you're just trying to promote your site to rank so people might buy your services, I would not recommend somebody make 100 articles, right? I think 10 or 25 good ones that you just constantly update. So that was the big thing that I found out was you publish an article, you do all the right things, you get the right URL structure, you figured out your keywords, or using, your H1 tags or whatever, that sort of thing. But you publish it, you wait a couple months, and then you do a massive update. So maybe publish an article with 500, 1,000 words. It really doesn't even matter. It gets indexed, I guess it's kind of in there. and then you do this massive update where you really put in all the effort to be like, how do I make this the best article on this topic? And even looking at kind of what's already on Google, I think it's really important. Like if I'm writing an article about content marketing, there's so many articles about content marketing that I don't think that there doesn't need to be another article. Like there's not something that's so new and profound that somebody needs to know. Maybe I'm just kind of making this assumption, but I think there's so much about that, right? But when it comes to creating a content outline, try to Google that, and it's very mishmash. It's not very clear how to create a content outline, right? Like what are your subheadings? How do you structure the content, right? That sort of thing. So doing that big update and then write kind of like a 500,000 word article and then wait 3 to 6 months and then kind of really putting the effort on it. But the thing that I found when I was looking at the articles that ranked, and I found this very interesting, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. I've been doing a lot of research about this. I don't see anybody talking about this. I've never focused anything on backlinks. If you look at the site, I got like basically no backlinks. Okay, I have no backlinking strategy. I see a lot of people doing cold email outreach to get backlinks. Hey, I saw you linked to this article. Maybe you want to link to my article, that sort of thing. I find it like spam. And I don't see why, if Google obviously knows people do that, how is that an indicator of quality content that you're just kind of getting these like random backlinks in a way, right? So it never really made sense to me. I don't think that backlinking is going to be significant in the future, and I don't really think it's that significant now. I think it really depends on kind of where those backlinks are coming from and how they're getting there. I'm sure there's more indicators on like what makes a really good backlink. Maybe more context within the article that's actually linking out, that sort of thing. But what I did was I bought this tool on AppSumo, a software or whatever. I'm a big fan of AppSumo, buying like lifetime deals, and it was called Q Promote. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
So what it is, so it's very interesting. So Q Promote, it's spelled Q-U-U-U. And by the way, I'm not an affiliate by this. I don't even know who's behind this company. I think Buffer bought them. I'm not even sure. So it's Q-U-U-U, 3 U's, right? If you go to q.co or .com or something, it'll publish content on your social media accounts for free, like 3 times per day. You choose the topics and the categories, and it'll publish to Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It'll publish articles. Like, let's say I'm into entrepreneurship, technology, and advertising, right? So I could put in those categories, and then it will just publish tweets with these articles, right? And it's free. And if you want to upgrade, they'll publish even more content for you on your social media. And what's interesting about that is I remember there was a company back in the day, I think it was called like 99 Social or $99 Social. It was like $100 a month. And they would publish 3 times a day for you on these various accounts. And people would buy this. It was like a popular service like a long time ago. But now it's being done for free, automated by Q, right? And then I discovered that they had this other service called Q Promote. And what it was, which I thought this was like a genius business. I'm surprised more people haven't copied this, but other people can pay to put their content in the queue of these people on these free or paid plans of Q, right?
All right.
So if I want to get shares on my thing, so I could buy a credit, each credit, I forget how the pricing works exactly. I think it was like $30 or $15 per credit, and I could like write out the tweet, I could write out the Facebook post and the LinkedIn post. I can write them all separately, right? And have my link to my article on there, and then it will get. And people can, if you're on the free plan, you cannot select which articles you want, but if you pay, you could like choose which ones you want to get published or not. And so I would put in an article, and then it would get shared, and I would get like 500, 1,000 shares between Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And so I had done this for a few articles only. And so when I would look back at the articles that were ranking number 1 on Google, there were all these ones that I put on Q that had hundreds or thousands of shares. So I believe, and again, I've looked at SEO experts. I don't claim to be an SEO expert, right? Like I've just kind of looked into it, and like no one's really talking about that. I think that social shares are more powerful than backlinks. I think getting 1,000 social shares versus, I don't know, 1,000, I'll call it crappy. Like you get 1,000 crappy social shares versus 1,000 kind of crappy backlinks. I think the social shares are more powerful because it's new. Not many people are talking about it. Maybe there's not as many indicator scores. I don't know, right? I'm sure if Google really wanted, they could kind of figure out the authority of people sharing and stuff. And Google used to be really big on getting Twitter's fire hose of data, right? I know for a while, I think it was about a year, Twitter results would show up in Google. So, and Google's really big on social. They care about social, right? So that was my thing. I had figured this out, that it was like these social shares are what made things rank. So what I would do is I would write this 500 word article, let it simmer in the results a little bit. I would share it. I would definitely get like some backlinks by maybe sharing it in a reply on Quora, or like just putting it somewhere that will get kind of like indexed, right? And then when I do the big update and now I'm proud of the article, then I put it into queue. And then it's like you wait 1 or 2 months and then it's like boom, it's like first page of Google. Like I'm talking very competitive keywords. I have a domain authority of like 30 or something like that, and I'm beating sites with a domain authority of like 60, 70, right? And then the other part, so I found another tool that did this, by the way. I would love if anyone's listening to this and knows of more tools that could do this. I'm trying to find them. But the other one was called Missing Letter. And I forget how to spell Missing Letter, but it's the name is missing some letters, but you got to try to find it. It's like a social media tool, but they just started a new thing as well that kind of does the same thing. You don't get as many shares like QPromote, you get way more shares, but that tool does it too. But I would love to see more people making tools that like kind of help you get shares on your content. The other part too is when people share it, when I see it on Twitter or whatever, I reply to them. I engage them in the conversation. I like it, right? And that's also helping me build my relationships. Not really relationships, but some engagement on social media. But yeah, so the other part was to then, when you're getting in the search results, getting those snippets, right? Those people also ask, right? And so on. And so I found another tool, AppSumo. I'm a big fan of AppSumo. No association. And it was called phrase.io. Do you know that one?
No, I don't.
So their big thing was around helping you create content outlines that are focused around phrases people are typing into Google or questions, right? And in that people also ask or people also searched for, right? In those kind of boxes on Google. So it was very interesting. I really like that tool. I think it's very valuable. But then I discovered that I can get the same data or even better data by just Googling the thing that I want to rank for and just looking at what questions do come up, right? On those people also ask. And I would kind of even not even just a top five, because the top 5 questions that are there are often either country specific or they even change by the week or by the month. So I noticed that it's not really consistent with what those related questions are. So I just kind of like look down. In phrase, it also pulls in questions around the topic that are being asked on Quora and Reddit. So you can kind of like try to predict the future of what question might show up. So I don't know all the algorithms of like how Google is figuring that out, but I decided to make all of our subheadings targeted towards people also ask and people also search on Google and try to get in there. I also think that that's important for voice, for the future of voice search, right? Because when people do a search on voice, I imagine they're going to be asking questions. So then the first paragraph under the question, I word it in a way that it's a direct answer to the question. So if someone were to say, hey, Alexa, I would set off some Alexas, but if someone said, hey, my assistant, and then they asked the question, I imagine the assistant just reading the first paragraph to give them the direct answer. That's kind of my thought process on the structure of the content. And so that's kind of what I'm in a way testing right now. This is my assumption that this is going to be a good strategy. I haven't really seen the fruits of it yet, but I believe that that's going to be the future. And so it's just been basically kind of like, that's been my strategy, is kind of like figuring out kind of, okay, what are the keywords we want to go for, figuring that part out, creating an outline that I could then give to a writer to write. We keep it just 500 or 1,000 words. Just get it out. Let's just publish the page, publish the URL, right? Do a little bit of promotion for that article. It's okay article. Share it on LinkedIn. Again, like I'll usually go into Quora, answer a question, put it in. Just have some ways for Google to find it in different ways, right? And then wait a little bit, and then go in and then just really overhaul the article, really optimize it, and then get all those social shares going for it. And a lot of this content, I'm making it evergreen. so that it lasts a long time. But I have a spreadsheet I use to make sure I always update the content. So we want to update it or just at least look at it every like 6 months or so and just make sure it's still up to date. Whatever backlinks are working, or not back, sorry, whatever we're linking out to is still working. Just looking at it and just saying, how can we make this a little bit better? Do we need to add more content to it? Should we add another question to it? Should we add an FAQ at the bottom of it? Right? And just kind of looking at that sort of stuff.
Right. Have you heard of the tool alsoasked.com?
Mm-hmm. Yes, also asked. And yeah, I did look at that one. And there's also Answer the Public.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was another one that did it. But I do find that with those questions, I think that's good for getting context of like, yeah, with also ask and Answer the Public, like you're getting context of like what else people are searching for. But for me, I was trying to figure out the data of Google getting into those, what they already display. And I had found that just by Googling it and just looking at the questions has been way easier. You don't need another tool. You could just literally just look at it, right? Or if you see an article that is ranking already, you can kind of see what they've already, what questions they're using in their subheadings and stuff. So yeah, it's been interesting trying to find tools that do the content outlines. There was a few that also use GPT-3, which is like the new like AI copywriting stuff.
Yep, from
There's a
OpenAI.
really good tool I'd found. Yeah, that's right. And so there was one, I want to give them a shout out. I cannot remember what their name was, but they did a really good one where they would show you results of people ranking, but then they would also show you sites or articles that were outranking their domain authority. And I found it very interesting because that would really point out an article that was well made, right? Because if it was ranking on a competitive keyword, but they were outranking their domain authority, then it was like, what is going on with that? And then I could really like dive into that article and like figure out like what was special about it. And then you could look at like tools like BuzzSumo. I use Ubersuggest or Social Animal, and you could find articles around topics that have a lot of social shares. And then you can kind of dive in that article and kind of look at the data behind that too. And that would help you kind of determine some things.
So there's an approach that I learned from Evan Carmichael in regards to YouTube that I was reminded of when you were describing finding those standout articles that outperformed the domain authority of the site that it was hosted on. And the approach is simply this: you find articles in a topic on YouTube, doing the YouTube search for whatever it is, and then you have a vidIQ plugin or extension going on your web browser so that it'll show you the number of subscribers to that particular channel for each of the search results, each of the search listings. And you're looking for those videos that are outperforming their subscriber numbers.
Interesting.
In terms of view count, right? So if it's 3 million views and they only have 30,000 subscribers, that's a standout piece of video content.
Wow.
Right? If it's 3 million views and they've got 3.5 million subscribers, well, yeah, they're just they bust out beyond their fan base, their existing subscriber base.
Yeah. That's very interesting because I've never seen that data in other like YouTube data tools. So vidIQ has that, hey?
Well, it only shows you the subscribers. It doesn't do the analysis for you. You got to do that by hand. But so let's say that you want to rank for
I see.
the term or in the topic space. You're looking for ideas for videos around content marketing. So you type into YouTube content marketing. You would then find the standout videos that have a lot of views for the number of subscribers. And if you don't have vidIQ installed, then you're going to have to click on that channel, see how many subs they have, and then go back to the search results and go to the next video and click on that channel to see what their subs are, and that's a big pain. So this makes it a lot easier to just see the standout examples. Then you can kind of copy and paste the title of the video, put it into a Google Sheet, and use those as
Yeah.
ideas for your own videos.
Interesting. But so vidIQ is not actually highlighting these. It's just somebody else was saying that's how he was using vidIQ. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, funny.
So you can use a
That is
similar
actually
sort
very
of
good.
model for not just YouTube, but it sounds like that tool that you were describing does something in the article space. So if you
Yeah.
look at, let's say, LinkedIn tweets that are not tweets, but it's posts that are outperforming their follower base, you could probably do a similar sort
Right,
of thing.
right.
Like, for example, you look at Tim Ferriss's presence on LinkedIn. He's doing really well. He's got 1.5 million followers on LinkedIn, but he does these incredible, or his team does, incredible posts about the past episodes on his podcast. He'll take a little quote from the episode that's just a standout example, an amazing knowledge bomb or something, and put that at the beginning as text, and then a couple links to the episode for, let's say, YouTube and not YouTube, but for Apple Podcasts and to the blog post. And then he's got a little image underneath it, and it's very effective, very, very effective. These perform really well. I could imagine looking at the standout examples on LinkedIn of in people's feeds, finding ones that are really outperforming their follower count would give you strategies that you could just emulate.
Right.
Yeah, this was
I
actually
was
an example
actually,
that was given to me by James Schramko. So we were having a call earlier, and he was pointing out, like, that's the only place he clicks in the LinkedIn newsfeed, pretty much, and the only podcast he listens to these days, other than his own, is the channel, or the Tim Ferriss podcast, and the stuff he finds in the LinkedIn feed.
it's interesting. There's no tool that's really like built around finding standout content, eh?
Well, there's
It's interesting.
some that will find, like BuzzSumo will find those pieces of content that get a lot of shares, but I think that it's not really taking into account the fact that it's or like for the audience that they have, the subscriber base or follower base that they have, what are the standout pieces beyond that little microcosm that they already occupy?
Right. When I was doing research around Instagram marketing, I was trying to find someone's profile and then find the most popular post that they had ever shared.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a API thing where you can only go back, I think 1 month or 3 months or something like that. So you can never know the lifetime of the account, what are the most popular posts they'd ever shared. But you could, some tools I'd found would find like the last month or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, it was the same sort of thing. Was like, how do you find the most? Because if you can go to, yeah, maybe like you want to start a meme account, right? And or some, I don't know if someone wants to do that, but you can go type in like a meme account and then just find out like which memes got the most engagement, and then you're like, okay, those are my memes now, right? But you couldn't do that. So that is interesting, an interesting idea. Hopefully, someone listening to this will take that idea and like make an app, because I think it would be valuable.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you're
the other
very
side,
much into apps, and if
yeah.
someone would have an idea for an app, how would they get that built? What would you tell them? They should post a job advert somewhere, or they should hop onto Upwork and
Or to build that app.
yeah. So let's
Just
say
like,
that you have an
I,
idea for
yeah.
some sort of automation sequence that you think could be quite popular if it was turned into an app. Do you have any thoughts for how somebody would get that app
I
created?
don't know. One thing is, I'm really big into like the startup scene and like the lean startup and stuff. I studied like, what was really trending like 2009, 2010. I've always kind of been in that scene, but I don't know anything about like development stuff or anything like that. Like very little. I could have a conversation, but not like, I just don't know. So that's why I'm not in the software space. I have a lot of ideas for different softwares and apps that would be great, but I have no idea how to get them made. I did. That's what I'm challenged to, like, if you go and find a developer and you don't really know like what's the best technology for this or what are the best ways of going about this. I'm a little bit reluctant myself to do it because I don't really know. But if I ever met somebody who is a developer type and they needed a really good startup idea, I definitely have some thoughts there. But yeah, I
Well,
am not into that. Yeah.
okay. Now you mentioned the Lean Startup. That's a very popular book. Who wrote that?
Eric Ries.
Eric Ries. Thank you. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the Lean Startup. Tell our listener what a Lean Startup means and why they should care about that, and how they could make their organization more lean.
Well, I don't, I mean, to me, the way I see it is whenever somebody wants to start a business, is I'm really big on the idea of a minimal viable product, right? So it's like, what's the least you could do to test that this is a good idea? So let's take that example of what we were just talking about, creating an app that would find you standout content, right? So if I want to start something like that, I guess what I would first start doing is I would build maybe a one-page landing page. Just build the site as if I am selling the software. And then I would have a sign up button that maybe it says start a 7-day free trial, no credit card required. And then maybe I would start promoting that. And I would first see if anybody would even sign up for a free trial. After they sign up for the free trial, thanks for signing up for the free trial. Our software's not ready yet, but we'll notify you when it is. Right. And that would be like what you consider a minimal viable product. Because let's say you go out and you do build the whole software, right? Even if we just built like screenshots of like what it could look like, right? That would be nice, right? But if you went and actually programmed it, you spent all this money, and then you run it, and then you don't know the marketing, people didn't really want it or whatever it was, right? The other stage of that is to actually charge the money or to pretend you're charging the money and be like, here it is, it's $100 a month. Do you want it? And then see if anybody even tries to sign up for it, right? That's kind of what they'd call like a minimal viable product, right? So I think that's the first stage. The other part is, I can't really recite every part of it. I think there's so many different lessons and methodologies like within it that are kind of like in my mind, in the back of my mind, but I don't know what the whole, I think it's like a 5 or 6 step system. But yeah, the other part is like being, willing to adapt or pivot, right? So let's say you build a software like that and you find people are really only using it for some other solution, right? And that's like the main thing that you might want to change the whole model. So it's like, okay, this is actually a tool for this instead of for all these other features, right? That sort of thing. So I just think if anyone's starting a business, I think the lean startup is really like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, don't go and get an MBA. Don't go and study business at school. Study the lean startup methodologies. That's how you like start a business, right? And I think that's a big misconception. Whenever I hear someone say, I want to be an entrepreneur, so I'm going to go get an MBA, I'm like, do you even know what you're going to learn in an MBA? Like, that's nothing to do with entrepreneurship, right? So that's yeah, I think that's basically all I can really share with that.
So how did you apply lean methodologies in your business in order to grow, to pivot, to do things more cost effectively?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to like when I was doing Internet Masterminds, I think I had validated that business for like 10 years because I was running the events, right, for so long. So it was very validated in that sort of a way. When we were first selling the chapters, the first thing I did was a cold email outreach on LinkedIn. I hired somebody full time to message people who I basically were trying to find people like me. I was trying to find like a digital marketer who lived in the city that we were targeting that was looking to kind of build some influence in their city and kind of build a community around them and that sort of thing. And so they would just message people, and then we had this whole outreach. I don't want to call it a script. I call it conversational marketing, right? So basically, it was really funny. Because I started doing it myself, and it was just like, what's the very bare minimum I could do to try to like sell a chapter? And I wanted to really hear the objection, right? If I ran an ad and it didn't convert, I might not know why, right? So I was just reaching out to people saying, would you want this? And if they said no, I'd be like, would you mind telling me why? And they would tell me, right? And then I could like figure it out. So I started by doing it myself, but it was funny strategy. This is a little bit of a side thing on this conversational marketing. I was messaging people, or I messaged this one guy, and I noticed there was like a lot of broken links and errors, and like because I was researching him before I messaged him, like I noticed his profile was outdated. So I reached out and I said, hey, the link to your website is broken. I think he didn't have the S on the HTTPS, and he didn't have his SSL set up properly, something like that. And then he was like, "Oh, thanks." And then he was like laughing. And then like I was like, "And also like this date on your profile." He's like, "Oh my God, like how embarrassing." I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "But that's not the reason I'm reaching out to you." And then I kind of stopped it there. Then he's like, "Well, why are you reaching out to me?" And then like it created this whole dialogue. And I was like, "Well, I'm starting this thing, and I'd like to create an event in Austin, Texas, you know." And then it just like because it was just natural, but it wasn't like a gimmick. I was just I was just being whatever myself. So that ended up being our strategy later on. I hired someone. I said, go find people and then find an error on their profile and then just message them and say, your link is broken. This is outdated, whatever it was, right? And it was so funny because it always created that conversation right away. And it became very conversational. It was very friendly, right? And then we would get them to ask us why we were even telling them that this was outdated, right?
Oh, that's that's pretty innovative. I haven't seen that approach.
But what's so funny is that everybody has an error on their LinkedIn profile, like 100%. There's always an issue on someone's profile because people don't update it. They don't look at it. Like even mine, I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile for probably a couple of years now, whatever it was, like maybe a year. But yeah, it's a good, yeah, I like this concept of conversational marketing. Again, like even going back to like if you want to start a business is like just like DMing people, like messaging people. You message them on Facebook, right? Like for me, I use a lot of Facebook groups with like talking about different softwares and tools, right? So if I see someone talking about something and they're like intelligent about it, or I think I could help them, like I'll just reach out and I'll leave them a comment on the post. I'm like, hey, I just sent you a DM, and then just create that dialogue. Let's chat on the phone and just kind of see how things go, right? On LinkedIn, you could just go directly to, like start the conversation up. And then, by the way, I want to offer you something or whatever, right? If you're using Instagram, you could do that, just DM people on Instagram. I found the response rate on Instagram is not as high. But this idea of just kind of reaching out, and it's like, I always thought like Twitter is like a big networking party and you could just kind of approach anybody, right? And that's what's great about Twitter. It's very open networking, but a lot of people are not active, I think, on Twitter. I think a lot of tech people are on Twitter, but most people are not very active on Twitter. So, and DMs on Twitter, I think, are horrible. But the idea of like Twitter emulating a big networking party, right? So now, I think especially now with like COVID stuff, is that like reaching out and just networking with people online, it's just kind of like, hey, what's up? Like you're just approaching, right? It's like a cold approach. It's like, hey, how are you? And like just kind of getting into something, but like figuring out how do you get their attention to get that first response, right? And then, yeah, I think I could, this is a little bit off topic, but I think I could.
It's interesting though, because I think that people get it wrong all the time in terms of doing that cold approach on social networks like LinkedIn. I get these really terrible immediate auto responses as soon as I grant somebody to be in my network. They send me a pretty innocent looking connection request. I grant it, and then 5 minutes later or less, I get this big spiel like, hey, I want to pay you money for posting guest posts on your blog, and or I want to sell you SEO out of some whatever country, and it's like, it's annoying, and it doesn't. I can't imagine that it works. It just would get you kicked off of the platform because so many people would complain.
Yeah. Do you know the story how LinkedIn had like a lawsuit about this whole idea of doing automated emailing through LinkedIn? Do you know the story about that?
No.
So you know how there's all these softwares, especially in the last year, even more have come out because of this past lawsuit. What happened was LinkedIn was trying to, I don't know if it was like a lawsuit or what the story was, but LinkedIn was trying to prevent third-party apps from building a tool that would automatically email people on LinkedIn.
Right. So doing the LinkedIn in-mails and stuff.
Yeah. And then they lost the case. So it made it now, even though LinkedIn doesn't like it, these tools are allowed to do this. You're allowed to message people on LinkedIn, and I forget the case as to why, but there was like this is like a few years ago, and so that's why now so many people do it. And I've seen people use InMail as if it's their newsletter. They're just emailing me like every week or 2 weeks, like, and the way they're written is like as if it's like in my email inbox. It's like, that style of direct response writing, right? And I was just looking at it like, that's interesting that this girl's doing this or whatever it was, right? I didn't hate her for it. I thought it was interesting. She's doing her hustle. It's okay. And there was other companies too I saw that had so many, like, I think they were bot accounts because like all the profile pictures, like they all kind of look the same. I swear it was like the same group, but they were selling this like a website service. But I was approached by so many of them, like 3 or 4 of them, and I was like, where are they getting me from? Like, why am I, keep getting hit up? And so when you're getting approached by so many of them, and it's so automated. Like the first one I was interested, but then I got it like 3 or 4 more times, and I was like, now I don't feel special anymore. Now I think you're fake, you know. But yeah, my approach is not to do like I don't use a bot. I'm just like targeting somebody very specific. Like when I was looking for a chapter leader, I was really looking for a really authentic person. So I would not only look at their profile. It was funny. The first thing I figured out, and this is very I think inappropriate to say, but I think I could look at somebody's picture and tell if they were like smart or not. And that's very, I think that's very bad. But that was my first thing is I would just scroll and just look at their face. And I'd be like, that looks like an honest face or that looks like a smart person. And then I would look at their profile. I would go and Google them. I would see their whole social media presence. Right. And I was trying to figure out, like, is this somebody who, if they were the chapter leader, people would want to go and be with them? Because a lot of people would come to Internet Masterminds because they thought I was cool in a sense. Right. So that's kind of what I was. So I was very manually approaching it. Right. And I had we had really good response rate. Like I was like everybody who I talked to that I wanted to be a chapter leader became a chapter leader, and we was doing really well. Right. So. And it was only like it was $100 a month for this chapter. It wasn't like a big sale, right? But they were making a big commitment to like host events, so it was kind of right. So the first thing was like looking at their picture and be like, do I want to work with this person or whatever, right? Then kind of looking at the profile and then creating that conversation. And a really good opening line to get someone to give you that first response is, do you know what I really liked about your profile? And then I don't even put a question mark at the end. I soften the question by not even using a question mark. I don't say, I say in the least amount of words as possible. It's like, know what I really like about your profile, and then that's it. And then they always want to know, what did you like, right? And then I will like give them I'll actually look at their profile, and then I'll give them a real honest answer, whatever it was. That came from my dating game and online apps, So it's the same sort of idea.
I figured when you were talking about the term cold approach that yes, you knew a bit about pickup.
Cold approach comes from that. Yeah. But the other one too is these little cues. So if that conversation dies off, it's almost one of the best things that can happen, because then you just respond with, still interested, question mark, or are you still with me, or you still there, or whatever. And then when they respond to that, they're like, yes, I am in the conversation. So if they do respond to still interested, right? If they might say no, and then you're like, okay, and then that's done, right? Or they'll be like, yes, tell me more, let's get on a call, whatever it is. You're getting that yes or no, whatever, And I found that that's a really good way to close it.
Reactivate.
So yeah, I have like a few little, yeah. So in this kind of idea of doing this cold email outreach, instead of saying, here's my service, are you interested? Let's schedule a call, right? If you think about marketing, or like this conversational marketing, like dating, right? If you were to like message a girl and be like, I'm a very great person and you would really like me and you can go here to book a date with me right now. Like that would just be weird, right? And it would just not be attractive, right? So if you think about it in that kind of a way, that's what people are doing. But of course, if you message enough girls or you message enough people, eventually someone's going to say yes. So if you're using a bot and you message 1,000 people, you're going to get someone who's going to be like, you know what, you are pretty sexy. I will book that date, and they'll go for it, right? But if instead you're going for the quality, right, and you just kind of really engage in a real conversation, and then eventually be like, okay, I think we have a connection here, business connection here. I think that we should jump on a phone and see how we can work together. And then it's like you're closing every sale. Like I don't never have like a weird sales tactics or reverse psychology or anything like that. It just like doesn't make sense for us to work together. It does. Okay, great. Here's what I have in mind, and that's it.
That's great, and that reminds me of something I learned from Neil Strauss years ago. I think he called it cat string theory, where you don't want to give the whole spiel all at once. You want to have some open loops that enough open loops they feel like I got to keep talking. I got to learn what the end of the story was or whatever. And sometimes you don't even ever close some of those open loops. Some you close at different times and so forth. And you could just kind of keep playing with them like in the conversation, like it's a cat that you're yanking the string and then keeping them occupied.
Right. Yeah, I learned this from, I had a female friend who used to give me dating advice back in the day. And what she taught me was, and by the way, I'm saying this because I think this idea of conversational marketing in business, like it's the same as dating. If you really put into perspective what you're saying to somebody and think about it in dating, it's like you could really like change your mindset around this. But what she was telling me was, don't ask questions, make statements. If they ask you a question, they're interested. If they don't ask you a question, they're not interested. Right? And so even if I do ask, so when I first start a conversation, I don't want to ask questions. I want them to ask me questions, right? But even when I do ask the questions, because it's like text, I don't even use question marks just to soften the question that I'm trying to not ask a question. So I don't want to use a question mark, that sort of thing. And it just makes it less. So it's kind of like a power dynamic. Whoever asks the most questions, or whoever's getting asked the most questions has the power in the conversation in a sense, right? So the objective is, yes, to get them to ask you. And then they're like, you got to get them to ask you, can we get on a call? That's kind of the goal of it, right?
Yeah. Another thing to see in terms of the power dynamic is if you're looking at a message exchange, whether it's DMs or text messages, the person who is giving the longer replies is the one who's in a less powerful position.
Losing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to match. If they write 2 lines, you write 2 lines, and like so on, right? But you also don't want to do what's called, like in the acting world, and it's called blocking, where you give a response, but there's nothing for them to respond back to. I think it's called, there's another term in the PR world called like reader's response theory. So it's like if you can't predict what they're going to say or engage with, like if you have a story like you're putting out in the media or like you're putting out a social media post, if you can't predict how people are going to comment or react, they're probably not going to comment or react. So if you give a response and you can't think about, well, what would they say in this response, right? You just give like a 1-word thing. It's like the conversation could die right there. So you got to make sure you give them a really easy thing for them to respond back to keep it going. But honestly, I don't know, like talking about this stuff is weird because for me, it's just like I'm just having a conversation. I'm not playing a game, right? There's only a few little cues that I'll do, like the still interested, you're still with me, that sort of thing. Do you know what I like about your profile? Pointing out the mistakes, just to start that conversation. But besides that, it's like I'm just talking to somebody. I'm getting to know somebody. I'm not trying to close them. I'm trying to figure out whether or not I want to work with them in a way, right? And that's kind of my feeling of having those conversations.
Right. So you're not doing it with a malicious intent, or you're not being disingenuous, but you are using techniques that help keep the conversation going and pique people's interest and help them, invite them to be the ones asking you questions. It's clever.
Right. It's like you want to emulate the real world online, right? Like if we were at an event and I was talking to you and I wasn't making eye contact with you, I wasn't smiling, I wasn't going nodding my head, you wouldn't know I'm engaged, right? But if I'm instead just kind of like off in the distance, right? I'm not really engaging with you, you're not going to be engaged in the conversation either, right? So it's like we're like texting, right? Like that's kind of language that we're using. It's like, what are those cues to let somebody know I'm interested in you, right? And that's kind of what we're looking for. So it's a little bit of an art. I don't know how well it can be like taught or whatever. Some people are just not good with texting, right? But if you just put into that perspective of like dating, right? And then you stop doing the like I'm great and you should schedule a date. Like that's what people are messaging on LinkedIn, right? They're just talking about me. This is how great I am. I don't care about you. If you have money, that's cool, but because I want your money, like I want something from you and I am great and you should give it to me. Now schedule the call, right? Those are what people are sending, right? And
And
it's just
they're
so
terrible,
unattractive.
yes. It's like a wall of text that suddenly comes in after I grant them the
Yeah,
connection request. Yep.
exactly, right? So it's like stop doing that. So.
Yeah. All right. So we're out of time here. If folks wanted to check out your courses or potentially work with you, engage your agency, do a project with you, where should we send them to?
I guess place if somebody wanted to engage and like possibly work together, I would say either send me like a DM on Instagram. I'm just at Matt Astifan. Um, Tell me what you like about my profile. I don't know. And I can just imagine getting all these messages saying, "Do you know what I like about your profile?" Or yeah, my website is mattastifan.com. There's a place there to like just if you want to like book a call. I'm because I'm like in this realm of like trying to create a lot of content for web friendly. If you're somebody who's like a digital marketer and want to get some exposure on search results and you want to write a good article, you don't have your own blog, you want to kind of put it somewhere else. I'm looking for people who want to create content for the site, and then I put in my effort to actually rank it on those keywords that you want to rank for. Even if you are already ranking on that keyword and you want to have another listing in that on that keyword, I can do it for you. So if you're into putting together really good quality content around creating a really good resource around like a strategy or a technique of starting or growing an online business, I'm looking for people like that want to work together and create content for webfriendly.com. You write the content, and then I do all the marketing promotion for it, all the SEO for it, that sort of thing. And that's what I'm really looking for right now.
Yeah, awesome. And a little tip here that I think will be helpful, not just for you, Matt, in this process of getting these writers to contribute to webfriendly.com, but also for a listener who might want to publish on other sites, whether it's webfriendly or somewhere else, maybe medium.com or whatever else. There's this strategy called the evil twin that I think is really clever, and I learned about this from Andy Crestodina years ago. It's very simple. It's like, all right, you wrote a piece of content to publish on your blog. Let's say it's the 10 best practices in content marketing or whatever. If you flip it and come up with the opposite of that, like the 10 biggest mistakes in content marketing, right? Or it's like these are the leaders in, like, all successful content marketers do these 5 things, or all the 5 worst content marketers and what they've done in order to destroy their content marketing. It's just the same content piece but flipped. It's based on the same research. You just have to kind of rewrite it, paraphrase it, rather than starting from scratch. So if you invite people to submit either a completely new piece of content to Web Friendly, or an evil twin that they don't have to start completely from scratch. It has to sound completely different, but it's based on the same
Right.
research on something they've already written. That might be more appealing for them to say yes to.
Very interesting. Uh, I like that. I like that idea.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think the other side too is that we could like actually put something in there so it's like a lead generation for them, right? Once they're ranking and then we have something there, it's like go and schedule a consultation with this person. And I think that also creates a benefit. I've been trying to figure out like what makes it really worth it for someone to like write on another person's blog, right? A lot of people do guest articles and so on other people's sites, right? So just kind of like looking at like what really is makes it incentive, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
All right. Well, thank
but
you,
I like that
Matt.
idea.
So
Yeah, thank you.
mattastifan.com, and if you listener want to work with him, send him a DM on Instagram, and he'll get back to you. All right. Thank
Yeah,
you, Matt.
cold approach me on Instagram.
For sure.
All right.
For sure. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
And
you.
we'll catch you on the next episode of Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.